Well, hello scrappers, Mike here, welcome back to my channel. And this is going to be the third video dealing with this 41 feet of silver-plated wire, aerospace wire that my friend Justin sent me. In the last video, I very laboriously stripped out 1 foot of this stuff. And that was not easy because we got a lot of conductors here. They all are shielded twisted pairs of various sizes, various wire gauges, and it took a long time to strip. This Teflon insulation, the outer wrapping is very tough, the inner insulation is very tough. There's a lot of conductors there. Just stripping it took forever. Just a foot of this cable took forever. And basically ruined both my thumbnails and made my fingers, which are getting a little arthritic anyway, very sore. So I wound up with this very shiny ball of silver-plated copper here that weighs all of 118 grams, okay? So about half the weight of this wire is insulation, and the rest is silver-plated copper conductor underneath. So that's what we determined in the last video. We determined exactly how much of the wire is metal, what percentage is metal, and we also determined that manually stripping it is just a non-starter. It ain't happening, okay? I'm not stripping another inch of this stuff manually. So I asked you guys to leave comments, suggestions, ideas, whatever, and boy did they roll in. Wow, I haven't had many videos that have sparked such conversations in the comments as that last video on this silver-plated wire. Just crazy number of comments came in. It reminded me of a sign I had on the wall of my office for most of the 30 years that I worked as an engineer, okay? And it said, rate for answers. And it said, answers, $1. Correct answers, $2. Useful answers, $5. You know, practical answers, $10. That sort of thing. And it went on down the line. You know, it's the implementable answers, $20, and so on. And down at the very bottom, it said, smart aleck remarks and dumb looks are still free. So what was going on in the comments reminded me a lot of that sign I had in my office, because there were a lot of answers. There were some correct answers. There were a few useful answers. But there were some smart aleck remarks too. But you know what? I appreciate all of those comments, even the smart aleck remarks, because some of them made me chuckle. Okay, so keep those coming in the comments. I love them. So I had another sign on the wall of my office too during most of those 30 years, and it said, "The impossible done immediately. Miracles may take a day or two." And, well, you know what? I think a miracle came through after a couple days of that video being up, because one of the viewers contacted me and said, hey, Mike, I've got a granulator. I'll do your wire for you. So the viewer's name was Tim Toolman, 4125. He has volunteered to run this stuff through his granulator. He's in Montana, and it's like, oh, I had to do a dope slap on myself because I was in Montana last month. I could have took this stuff to him. I already had it. I didn't know about it at the time. I could have took it up there and dropped it off in person. So this stuff's packed up. It's going to be shipped off to Montana. So Toolman Tim 4125 can run it through his granulator, and we'll see how it goes. And this is something else that we had a lot of back and forth in the comments about. Some people were saying a granulator is the only way to go. Other people were saying a granulator won't handle this stuff. So I guess we'll find out who's right. Tim thinks this will go through his granulator no problem. He sent me pictures of him running cat wire through it and how well it works with it. So I guess we'll see. I guess we'll find out just how well it goes. So I'm going to ship this off to Tim up in Montana. I'm going to put some money in here to cover return shipping for the granulated material, and we'll see what happens. And thank you very much, Tim, for volunteering to do this. And we'll see how well it works. And this may be an answer for some of the other YouTubers who received care packages like this from Justin. If they want to get their wire granulated, we'll see. And then it's maybe an answer for Justin, who apparently has a lot of this wire and kind of needs to figure out how to deal with it. So we'll see how my sample goes, and then we'll figure it out. Maybe other people can do deals with Toolman Tim too, and see if they can get their stuff granulated. So, like I said, I'll pack this up. Getting this in this box was like herding snakes, let me tell you. It did not want to go in, and it barely fits, but we'll get this shipped off to Tim, and maybe in a few weeks, we'll know the answer, okay? In the meantime, we've got this shiny ball of silver-plated wire here that's just itching to be processed, so we can figure out just how much silver is in this, what the percentage is. Now, another YouTuber who received, a wire care package like this from Justin Silverstone, he processed some of his, and he came up with a figure of a little over 4% silver by weight, but he was only doing the outer sheath. He wasn't doing the inner conductors, too. So I've got the outer sheath and inner conductors here. So we'll see if I come up with a number similar to what Silverstone came up with. Should be an interesting test. Cross-check. Okay, so I also asked for ideas on how to process this stuff, and I listed some ideas that I already had on how to do it, kind of like my idea list on my office wall. But since this is such a small sample, only 118 grams here, I think we will go with the easiest method, even though it is by far not the most cost-effective method. I think we're just going to dissolve all this in nitric acid, either convert the silver nitrate to silver chloride and do the lye and sugar method, or cement the silver out with copper. So I'm kind of leaning toward the second method because there's always some losses with the lye and sugar method, but it produces purer silver. But I'm thinking that the cement method will be quicker, easier, and maybe give me a better idea of the total yield of silver in here. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think, which is better, if you have an opinion. So let me get set up, and we'll get started on processing this stuff, and we'll find out exactly how much silver's in it. And I'll get this stuff over to the post office and mail it off to Toolman Tim up in Montana. All right, let's get this show on the road because it looks like it's about to rain. So let's get this stuff in a beaker. All the little flyaway bits, too, that I collected off my bench, get them in there. That looks like we got pretty much all of it. All right. So next, I am going to put some purified water on it. I've talked about this before. Distilled water is hard to find in parts of Florida for some reason. There's a shortage. But this Publix purified water seems to work very well for most of what I do. It doesn't seem to have any chloride ions in it, which is great for working with silver. So I'm going to put enough water in here to pretty much cover the wire. All right. And I said that this is probably the least economically viable way to do this. But on the other hand, I have some nasty old nitric acid here. Been sitting around for quite a while. It's turning yellow. So might as well get rid of it on this project. I'm pretty well stocked with nitric right now. So this probably won't be enough to do the job, but I have a couple more bottles of it. So we'll get rid of this nasty old stuff and maybe part of another bottle, and we'll see just how much nitric acid it takes to dissolve all this wire. So let me get this in the fume hood, and we'll get started. All right, it is getting really dark. It's going to storm, so let me get this started, and this can just go in the fume hood while I retreat into the house and wait out the rain. So I'm going to pour and get the fume hood going. I've replaced the blower on the fume hood. Did that first thing this morning. Nice and quiet. So we're going to start off with about, well, I might as well dump all of this in here. We'll see how much we have. Ooh, right about 200 milliliters. Okay. And I'll put this stuff in small doses because I don't want to have a big boil over. Okay, so here we'll go the first dose of nitric acid. Let's see how this goes. I'm expecting a pretty vigorous reaction, even with this still being stone cold. Yeah, you can see it's starting to bubble. Let me zoom in on that for you a little bit. Yeah. So that was about 75 milliliters. Let me make it even 100 milliliters or so. Oh, yeah. So we'll leave it at that for now. And I'm going to put a little bit of heat to it. Not too much, because like I said, we got a pretty vigorous reaction going here, even without any heat. So I don't want to drive it too hard and have a boil over, though I do have my big Corningware dish here to catch the results if it does boil over. The Corningware dishes have saved my butt a few times in the past. Check out my blooper reel. I'll put a link in the upper right to that blooper reel I put together a while back. There were a couple boilovers in that. All right, so we're just going to let this go until I don't see any more reaction, and then we'll put some more of the acid in, and we'll keep that up until we get all this wire dissolved. Well, how long is that going to take? I don't know. Probably the rest of this day anyway, maybe into tomorrow. How much acid is it going to take? I'm sure I'm going to have to crack open another bottle. I don't think this extra 100 milliliters over here is going to do it. So anyway, let me retreat towards the house before Mother Nature starts dumping hard on me, and we'll come out and check on this again in a little while. Okay, it looks like those dark clouds have blown over without dropping any rain on me. It's probably raining inland. We're a little closer to the coast here. So they skipped right over me. Anyway, yeah, the sun's coming out. Wow. Anyway, this has been going for a little while now. It's starting to warm up, getting a much more vigorous reaction, a lot more fumes being created. But what I wanted to show you here was to zoom in on the wire and show you that the wire still looks like it's covered with silver. And you know why that is? Because it is still covered with silver. Copper, which is what makes up the bulk of this stuff, is much more chemically reactive than the silver. So the copper is going to want to go into solution first. That's why the liquid is turning blue. That's turning blue with copper nitrate. Silver nitrate is colorless. So we got copper going into solution here. Now, copper being much more reactive than silver, when some of this silver does go into solution, it's going to hit a copper atom on the wire, and it's going to come right back out of solution and trade places with the copper. The copper will go in, the silver will come out. So the silver is continually re-cementing on the copper that's left in there. And this is going to go on until we get all that copper in solution. And then finally, the silver will go into solution. There's just no way to keep the silver in solution permanently for any length of time even until all the copper's gone. That's why this is a very inefficient method of doing this, okay? It takes 2 moles of nitric acid to dissolve 1 mole of copper. It takes 1 mole of nitric acid to dissolve 1 mole of silver. So yeah, this is very inefficient. And nitric acid's expensive, you know, so this is not the way to do it on a large scale, but I think for this small scale test, it's not going to break the bank. So this is still going gangbusters, so it doesn't need any more of this nitric yet. So we'll just let it sit and let it sit and cook until the reaction stops, and we'll put more nitric in. All right, it's been a little while, maybe an hour or so, and the reaction has died down. So let me put some more of this nitric acid in there. It's quite hot now, so I'm going to do it slowly just so we don't get sort of a runaway reaction. That's not too bad. Looks like there's still an awful lot of metal in there. So, like I was saying, I kind of doubt this extra 100 milliliters is going to be enough, but I'm going to be conservative. I'm only going to put about half of it in. So I don't want to severely over-nitric this just in case my guess is wrong, and it's not going to take a whole lot more nitric acid. So, okay, we'll let that cook. And we'll just keep this up until that metal's gone. Oh yeah, it's only been about a minute, 2 minutes maybe, and look at how vigorous that reaction is. We got a lot of nitrogen dioxide gas coming out of there and going out the fume hood. So I'm glad I only put half of that nitric acid in there. Yeah, I don't want this reaction to get out of control. I don't want to have a boil over. And I don't want to over nitric this stuff. All right, it's been a while longer. I went and had some lunch, and well, the reaction stopped again. Let's see if we can get an idea just how much metal is still down in here. It looks like we got a lot. I would say the bulk of it is still there. So, okay. In with the next 50 milliliters. And I've got out another bottle of nitric acid. Apparently, we're going to need a fair amount more nitric acid. So I'm just going to keep doing this. I'm just going to keep adding nitric acid until we get all that metal in solution. I'm hoping that we have enough liquid there to dissolve all the metal salts. Might have to either add more liquid to it or at some point pour this liquid off and start over with fresh deionized water and acid. But I'm hoping that there's enough liquid there to get it all in solution. So just going to keep this up, and I'll show you how it's going from time to time, but I won't make you watch every single addition of acid, or this video can get very long. All right, so it's been a few hours, and we are up to 350 milliliters of acid in here. I've cracked open a new bottle of acid for further additions. The last couple have been the new stuff. But we are getting there. The amount of metal still in the liquid there, undissolved, is getting pretty small, which is good, because this liquid is really getting concentrated. It's starting to look like it's getting viscous. Got a lot of metal salts dissolved in it. So I'm going to start adding smaller portions here because it looks like we're just about done. So I'm going to try and put in about 25 milliliters this time and see if that gets the job done. As I keep saying, I don't really want to over nitric this stuff. So we're getting close. Getting close. That might be all it takes, or it might just take a little bit more. We'll see. Okay. So it's been a while. I haven't put any more nitric in since that last 25 milliliter addition. I did put a little more water in here off camera just because this had boiled down some and it was getting really viscous and concentrated. So I put a couple hundred milliliters more water in it. So there is still a little bit of metal down here. And I'll bet this is pretty much all silver at this point. I bet the copper is pretty much chewed up. So we're going to put just a little bit more nitric in here. Maybe another 25 milliliters. Let's see, where are we at? Okay. A little more. Oh yeah, it's bubbling again. Alright, we'll leave it at that. But we are getting close. We are getting close. That'll probably be the last edition. We'll check and see, but I think that'll probably be the last edition. All right, this appears to be done. I've stirred it around. I've looked at it from the bottom. There's some debris swirling around in there. There's some stuff on the bottom that looks like insulation that I guess I didn't get separated out from the ball of metal. But I don't see any more metal in there. So I'm calling it done. I've turned the heat off. We're going to let this cool down so I can filter it. And then we'll move on to getting the silver out of this so we can figure out just what percentage of it is silver. Now, it took just a little over 400 grams of 68% nitric acid to get that 118 grams of silver-plated wire in solution. So that's why I say this is not an economical method, because nitric acid's expensive. On a small scale, we can absorb the cost. Bigger scale, we got to find a better way of doing things. Okay, so we'll just let this cool down, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. I'm going to put the unused acid away, I'm gonna go in the house where the air conditioner's working. It's hot out here. All right, this has had a chance to cool off. In fact, it's the next day, so it's nice and cool. We're gonna filter this because there is a lot of crud floating in here, and there's some on the bottom too. Not sure exactly what it is. Some of it's insulation. But we're gonna filter this stuff and hopefully get a nice clean filtrate out of it. And then we will cement out the copper from the nice clean filtrate. Yeah, that's coming through clean. Oh yeah, some of this floaty stuff, there were these little pieces of like printed tape wound up with the wire that had the mil spec number on it. And I guess I didn't get all of them separated from the wire. That's some of what's floating in here. All right, well, we'll let this filter, and then we'll move on to trying to get the silver out of it. So here's a look at all the crud I filtered out of that wire, and I am surprised at the amount of stuff here. I mean, yeah, okay, obviously I missed a little bit of insulation when I was cleaning up the wire, and there's a lot of these little pieces of tape that have the mil spec number written on them that somehow I missed. But what is all this other stuff? There is a lot of black stuff here, and I am surprised at the amount of crud here that we got out of this 118 grams of silver-plated wire. What is it? Where did it come from? And why is it in the wire? That is very weird. And then, you know, speaking of black crud, look at this beaker. Right around the water line. There is just, you know, a huge amount of this black stuff, and it is stuck on there tight. I don't know what it is, but it ain't coming off. My stir rod, there's a line of black stuff around it right there, right about where the water line was. Not coming off. Don't know what it is. I don't know, some sort of lubricant, some sort of waterproofing material, some sort of, I don't know, anti-corrosion material they added to the wire. I don't know what in the world this stuff is. I'll try my usual trick of boiling some aqua regia in this beaker to see if that cleans it up. I'll stick the stir rod back in it too. Hopefully that will clean it up. We'll see. But I'm going to put this stuff into a clean beaker, not this one, and we'll see if we can cement out the gold. I'm going to wait for the drips to stop though and transfer it to a clean beaker. Okay, this very pretty blue liquid is now very clean. So let me get it into a clean beaker. And I want to dilute this stuff to about a full 2 liters here. Clean out my flask while I'm doing that. I have found that trying to cement silver out of too concentrated of a solution can lead to problems, like a very vigorous reaction and pitting of the copper, which will then contaminate the silver. So we're going to dilute this. Let me bring it to a full 2 liters here before we put the copper in it. Okay, we're ready to go. We can see if we can cement out the silver. So I'm going to try and catch a time lapse of this with my GoPro. And I've got here a coil of number 6 bare copper wire. And we're just going to drop it right down in here. And we're just going to let that sit and see what happens and see just how much silver we can cement out of this pretty blue liquid. And it looks like there's already a coating of silver on the wire there. I think this is going to be a very interesting time lapse. Okay, so we'll just let it go and see what happens over the next few hours. So check that out after a couple of hours. I hope I'm getting a really decent time lapse on the GoPro down there. I guess we'll find out. I'm just going to let this continue going until it looks like it's done, which actually can take over a day. I may let this go a couple of days just to make sure we've got all the silver out of solution. All right, it has been just about 48 hours. Knocking all the silver off of this coil in here, and we'll let it accumulate down in the bottom. And we'll do a test to make sure we got all the silver out of solution. Oh, I think after 48 hours, we probably got about all we're going to get. But yeah, we'll do a test. Let me get some tap water and some uriatic acid in there, and we'll do a test on this and see if we still have any silver in solution. Put a little bit of tap water in here. Sloppy this morning. All right. Little splash of muriatic acid. Just a little splash. It doesn't take much. Let's see. This has had a chance to settle. Silver's headed for the bottom. That is pretty darn crystal clear. So I would say we have got all of the silver out of solution here, and it's now on the bottom of this in the form of cement silver. Let me get the coil out of here. Oh yeah, even the coil's clean after all that banging around. Cool. Nice. All right. So, some floaty silver here. Get it to sink. Let me pour off this blue liquid. I've got some water heating up in the fume hood on the burner, so that we can do some rinses on the cement silver that's down here in the bottom of this beaker, and get all this blue liquid out of it. Get the copper contamination out of it. Clean it up a little bit, then we'll dry it out and we'll weigh it, and then we can do some Jethro Bodine ciphering, maybe a little Anses and some Gazintas, and figure out just what percentage of silver this wire was. So I'm going to pour the bulk of this liquid off right into my waste bucket over here. And I keep scrap iron in the waste bucket, and, well, copper cements out on the scrap iron. So what we got here is a lot of copper nitrate. So I will get all that copper back as cement copper in my waste bucket here eventually. I talk a lot about the waste bucket and my whole waste treatment system in my series of videos on processing my stock pot liquids. I'll put a link to that in the upper right. You can check that out if you like, if you haven't already. There's our cement silver in there. Try not to dump too much of it off. Back down in there, you. Yeah, so there's our cement silver. And it sure does look like a whole lot when it's wet, but I know from experience that a whole big pile of cement silver, once it's dried out, doesn't amount to diddly squat. So, yeah, there's not a huge amount of silver there. All right. So let me take this back over to the lab, and we will start rinsing this to get the blue copper out of it. And then we'll tally up what we got. Alrighty, let's get this silver cleaned up. I think the first thing I'm going to do is transfer it into a smaller beaker. Yeah, it sure looks like a lot when it's wet, but I think we will find out there ain't that much here. My wife accuses me of being too negative all the time, but I think in this case, experience has shown that there's not a lot here. You add a little extra hot water to this, swirl it around a bit. Let that silver settle. And I'll just use this beaker I just took it out of as a waste beaker. And we'll dump this blue liquid off. Try not to lose too much of the silver in the process. And I'll just keep rinsing it like this until I don't see any more blue color. And then I'll give it another rinse or two after that. And then we should be pretty copper free. Not completely copper free. I do believe that the lye and sugar method gives us much cleaner, purer copper than silver cementation. But for our purposes here, where we're just trying to determine how much silver is in this wire, I think this is going to be good enough. Certainly within a fraction of a percent, I would think. All right, so I'm just going to keep this rinsing up. I mean, there's still some blue there, so it's going to take a few more rinses. I won't make you watch everyone, and we'll be back when it's done. All right, that looks pretty good. I haven't seen any color in a while. So I'd say we've got pretty clean silver here. I don't think I've pulled too much over into the wastewater. Some very, very fine particles that don't want to settle out. I don't think my scale would even measure whatever's in there. I'm just going to put this in my waste bucket and cement out the copper. And yeah, they'll be a little bit contaminated with a little bit of silver, but you know what? It's not going to be enough to worry about. And the bars I'm going to pour from the copper in my waste bucket will probably, at least some of them, will be going through an electrolytic cell. So I'll get the silver back and whatever gold they contain, precious metals, in the future. Watch for those videos. Okay, now that I've got this stuff cleaned up, I'm going to put it in the fume hood on the still warm burner in there, and we'll dry it out. And I'll bet you it's going to shrink down a whole lot during the drying process. But once it's dry, we'll weigh it up and see just how much silver we got. There we are, drying it out in the fume hood. I think that's going to shrink a whole lot by the time it gets dry. All right, so let's weigh this stuff up. And just as I predicted, it has greatly reduced in volume as it's dried out. There is not that much material here compared to the way it looked when it was wet. But let's see what we've got weight-wise here. That's the important thing. Get it all unstuck from the inside of this beaker. Try not to spill it all over the place, and I'm already spilling it all over the place, damn it. Okay. I shall have to gather up some of this wayward powder. Some of it looks pretty big. Put that up on there. Well, okay. 4.41 grams. All right. Well, you know what? This is looking like this is going to be not too far out of line with what Silver Stole got for his numbers. He got a little over 4%. And I'm thinking, top of my head, this is looking like a little over 4%. So let me do a little bit of math, and we'll figure out exactly what we got here. Okay, we'll do a little figure in here and figure out just what we got, but I'm going to put this silver away in one of my silver jars just so I don't do something stupid and spill it all over the place, which has been known to happen. All right, there we go. All right, so got the silver put away, out of harm's way. My silver jars. Okay, so let's look at what we got here. Okay, so we had a foot of wire before stripping. It weighed 214 grams. All right. After stripping, we had 118 grams of metal. And then after we dissolved all that metal in nitric acid and cemented out the silver, we had 4.41 grams of silver. So maybe there's not as much silver here as what Silver Stole was seeing. Maybe let's see here. So 4.41 divided by 118. Yeah, 3.73%. So a little under 4% is what I'm seeing for the stripped wire. It would be, yeah, 3.3, whoops, 3.7% is what I am seeing for the stripped wire. All right, and then, yeah, if we did it, by the weight of the unstripped wire, well, it's probably going to drop it by about 50% here. So 4.41 divided by 214 equals, yeah, we're right about 2%, basically, by weight, as you get the wire unstripped. So there's not a lot of silver there. And you saw how much work I went through to get it, both in the last video with all the stripping and in this video with dissolving it in nitric acid and then cementing it out on copper and then cleaning it up. So it's a nice clean metal. So yeah, got some silver there, but really not a lot. Not a lot for all the work I put into it, for sure. I would not want to do that again. So the box with the rest of the wire has gone off to Toolman Tim, or I'm sorry, Tim Toolman 4125, and he should be getting it maybe tomorrow or the next day. And he's going to run it through his granulator and send me the results back. So then we might work on more efficient ways to recover the silver. I'm not sure with silver percentages, this low, that there's really a good way to do this. Not for the amateur anyway. If a large-scale refiner, yeah, they'll be getting everything out of the copper, as they refine it. And, economies of scale come into play. But as an amateur chemist and refiner, I don't think there's an efficient way to do this, given the price of silver, that you're not going to lose your shirt. But hey, keep your ideas coming. Some of them are practical, a lot of them are interesting, and some of them are funny. So keep your ideas coming about how to get the silver out of this in a practical, cost-effective manner. I'll keep in mind, once this comes back from Tim Toolman, it will be in a granulated form. I won't have to do any other work to it. I won't have to strip it. I won't have to cut it up. I'll just have to figure out a way to get the silver out of it. Now, we talked about some ways to do that in earlier videos, and I've had some other ideas too, although I'm not sure they're any more practical. So you guys keep sending in your ideas to me, and we'll see if we can come up with something that might work with this stuff. And work for Justin, who apparently has, like, I don't know, miles of this stuff. So, yeah, keep your ideas coming in. So if you found this video at all interesting, educational, informative, whatever, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to see my future videos. There'll probably be some more videos in this series of dealing with this silver-plated wire, and videos in gold recovery and other precious metals recovery and scrapping and whatnot. So subscribe to see those future videos. Check out my two other channels, Electric Geek 64, where all my electronics and retro computing stuff is, and Mike's Lapidary and Fossils, where all my rockhounding, fossil hunting stuff is. So check those out. Please like, subscribe, comment there if you would. I would appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching this one. Bye.